Okay, hopefully you can bear with me. I don't have any fancy video editing software, and I don't do these very often. So I just wrote a story about more fun with K8s and Python, Kubernetes Python. Um, this article is going over something that's incredibly complicated, and I wanted to do kind of a video demo of some stuff, or maybe not a demo, just kind of a run through. I know some people learn better with visual type stuff. This particular article is incredibly complicated. It goes over some pretty high level stuff. So the user story here is we have a let's say, I think I'm using that, okay. The user story here is we have this company called CView. Right? It's just a mock company that we're going to make. We will definitely have other customers, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to say we have one customer called CView. CView is going to have a production environment, but that production environment isn't actually going to do anything. What they're going to do is log into their cview.domain.com, and they're going to click a button, and that button is going to create them a new prod environment. So for the purposes of having organizations within the organization. So CView might have business units. So like the train business unit, the big truck, commercial vehicles, stuff like that. So CView is a company that makes transportation vehicles, and they want to be able to crank out production environments. And these production environments are going to be endpoints where basically IoT data gets delivered. Or I don't want to get into the specifics of that. But there's not going to be a huge amount of data going there. And it could be, but most of the data is going to be stored somewhere else. So the production environments that we're cranking out are basically visual tools for being able to look at the data. So it does have to know some information about the data that's in the big warehouse thing. So you have IoT devices on, say, like trains and trucks and cars and maybe drones, whatever, and they're all sending data to the central processor, and that central processor is sending the data up to this place. And so we have this condition where we want to crank out production environments. Now, in most cases, the way you would usually do this in a normal production environment, you'd have one prod application and CView and blah, and they'll basically send their data to the same place. You have an ingestion point, and then ACLs within your application that allow customers to only see one thing or another. This is why we don't all have our own Gmail prod account. We all go to the same domain. We have accounts within the application. Facebook.com doesn't have a prod environment just for me. That wouldn't make any sense. But that has more to do with shared data. So we're going to have a production environment that creates production environments. And so this is really tricky because normally what we do is like, okay, we have a prod, right? We have some Terraform for our production environment. We run that, it creates the infrastructure. And then we have something else like a bunch of Helm charts or something that just launches the application. And then you can have mechanics of all different kinds of there. Coinbase recently had a really good article about how they just didn't use Kube. They didn't need it. They did something else. Totally awesome. Because of the nature of what we're doing here in this case, Kubernetes actually makes a really good, really good platform because we have the namespace thing. That's going to help us out a lot. So we're going to use Terraform to spin up our initial EKS cluster and get the application running. And then this blog post really focuses on how do we get these production environments snapped out, right? I want an endpoint that goes and creates a new prod environment within our EKS cluster. So we don't luckily, thank goodness, we don't have to worry about doing like dynamic Terraform stuff. So in this case, if we were to do that, the way that would work is we'd have some Python code that would pull down something, like a couple of different ways you could do this, like pull down the Terraform code, templatize it, and then run it, and maybe do something with workspaces and hope you have the permissions and stuff right. we're not looking to do that. We want to make it a little bit simpler. And so the tool that we're going to use to do this, and this, you can go into the details if you want, read the details on here, kind of gives some background on what's going on, and talks about the articles that I just mentioned. But what we're going to do is basically create some glue code, some middleware kind of stuff, and it's going to talk to Rancher, and Rancher is going to be configured to talk to the new EKS cluster that we have. So a new EKS cluster comes up. It registers itself with Rancher. We do the AWS hackery-dackery-do to get everything working. So now it's in Rancher, and Rancher allows me like a single point to manage all of this stuff with this cluster. I don't have to go anywhere else. It's kind of nice, especially if you have a lot of clusters. A lot of clusters, a lot of apps, a lot of namespaces. Okay, so as is outlined here, Terraform is good at doing one part, and then we're going to introduce something else called CloudFormation, AWS CloudFormation. We basically create a JSON file that defines a manifest of secrets and IAM stuff that is going to be used specifically for the new cluster that we're going to be using. So CView, for example, says they want a new prod environment called trucks or truck division, something like that. We'll gather up the CloudFormation template. We'll actually launch a stack that has everything as far as the secrets, IAM stuff, all that for truck division. All right. And so this is where it gets kind of confusing. Like, we're using Terraform one thing and CloudFormation for another thing. CloudFormation is actually really good at this because our state is something that we don't really have to care about. We just send it to an API, and AWS takes care of everything else for us. Now, I point out, if you're using Vault or some other tool, totally awesome. The reason we didn't go down the route of Vault or some kind of some other kind of managed service like that, we have enough moving parts. Like, we're cranking out production environments. There's no reason to have one more moving part that we have to manage here. This is actually a lot easier. Just use CloudFormation to tell AWS to go make some secrets, make some things, and then we can be done with it. So it goes into some of the details of this, like, why are we doing this? We have our Docker images. we go from GitLab and put the Docker images into GCR, and then all of our compute is in AWS. So you think about it, any kind of private repo is going to require some credentials. So one of the secrets that we store is the credentials to get into GCR. So when we launch something, there's a key there. And then this goes over the Terraform, so it's just making an EKS cluster. It seems like a fairly well-known thing these days. And then Rancher comes in and allows us a visual UI to see everything. And so then we start talking about the magic sauce here. And I can jump down and give you some code bits, which are probably not that interesting, but there's a picture of what the Rancher UI looks like when you have a couple applications deployed. So the code is going through and allowing us kind of a programming space, which is what I love. People love to talk about infrastructure as code, and then you ask, like, well, what do you do? And it's like, well, I use Terraform. It's like, well, that's code. Sorry, it's not code. Neither is Ansible. Unless you're actually programming, it's not code, it's stanzas. Which I guess you could say that programming code is stanzas too, but good luck with that. So here's an example of deploying an app from the Rancher client side. This is how we actually tell the Rancher API to go do something. So we gather up the variables through Jinja templating, which is sort of expressed here a little bit. There's a function that goes to the render template, and it's just doing some Jinja 2 stuff. If you've ever used Ansible, you'll know exactly what this looks like. So I have a template that gathers up all the variables, and we have the secrets laid into the context and everything. And so my target namespace is hard-coded here, but it's something to improve upon. And you give it the catalog information, and then what this does is it goes and creates the app. it's like Helm. If you, it's using Helm, I should say. It's definitely using Helm. You won't be able to go and do like Helm list namespace degroder insight and see anything, because it's not exactly like Helm. It's using the Helm chart inside of Rancher to deploy applications. So an app in Rancher is a Helm chart, or instantiation of a Helm chart, I guess I should say. And so here you can see like we've deployed something called Foundation and Gen Certs, and then InfluxDB, and then the Foundation is red for reasons. It's not a big deal. It's just kind of growing pains, but we got two other things there. Okay, and so the nice thing about this is it's allowing us to use Helm charts that we've already written and used in other places to kind of plop things down. And the iteration that we're currently on does all of this with Ansible. So it's pulling Ansible code down from GitLab, and then it's framing up all the variables and then spitting out an Ansible run. I'm not a huge fan of Ansible to begin with, because I like dynamic things. I used Ansible in a data center recently, like a year ago, and it's a brilliant tool for managing things that don't move. But if you have things that move, it can be a little tricky. We're using this entirely in a local execution context to just do Jinja and then executing Helm. We're not using a single thing that's Ansible specific in our Ansible run. It's all just shelling out to do commands to frame up Helm stuff. So you think about it as like you can do the same thing with Terraform, right? You frame up some stuff, you templatize some things, and basically do the same thing with Terraform, but then you got to deal with your state, and that becomes really difficult. So the state here is essentially encapsulated in the Helm charts. And we might go further and do something more interesting with that. But like you could say like the state for the trucking division application or prod environment, I guess I should say, for CView is in this namespace. And so going down the road, we could potentially, do updates and stuff. Do updates through the Rancher UI, or do updates through another mechanism, which is just like having the software check the current versions and make a decision based on that. But having multiple prod environments is huge undertaking. We don't really know what we're going to do as far as updates. So that'll be an interesting thing to find out. But the nice thing about this is Rancher has this neat application system that does understand updates. So if I went and I built out a new version of, let's say Foundation, I fixed a bug that's causing the red there. I bumped the version, I upload that to our Artifactory repo, and then I go to Rancher and I say, refresh this Helm repo, there's a little button for it. It'll go down and pull the most recent versions down. And so it's currently at 0.20, so let's say I do 0.21. It will see that in this application view, and it'll give me a little update button. So I just go click update. So that's pretty cool. And assuming everything went right, which I'm sure it'll never go wrong, then the application just updates. And it does do blue-green deployments on the back end in special kind of Kube way. So as long as you have your health checks set up correctly, should be good to go. With the InfluxDB thing, we probably never update that. It's likely we would never touch it. If we had it, we're eventually going to have a service that does have a health check. These two, Foundation and Gen Certs, don't really do anything. They're just storing secrets. So nothing really important there. But if we had, when we do have a service in there that's got an endpoint and stuff like that, we'll do the, Kube, we'll roll rolling updates. So that's what this super long blog post is about, and it's got some conclusions down there. This is an incredibly ambitious thing to pull off. Anybody is looking at doing this and thinks, well, Kube supports namespaces, we should just do that. Yes, it is a good idea, but it is pretty ambitious, and doing this in a dynamic way, boy, tough. I have worked for a company in the past where they had the application all figured out and they were trying to do this. Like they were trying to do the dynamic production and deployments after having the application done. And it was still a huge group of moving parts that were very difficult to put together. So that's it for me. I hope you have enjoyed this or not, whatever. It was fun to do.